Okay, Martin, first of all, thank you very much indeed for joining us.
Yeah, it's very nice of me to do this, David.
It is. So 10 years ago, you came up with the idea of doing brand valuations.
I don't think I came up with it, but it was sort of the sort of miasma of it all. Yeah, go on.
Well, metaphorically
that's right, metaphorically.
Of fusing the brand Z data with financial data to come on brand valuations. A lot has happened in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
As a global business leader, how would you characterise the last 10 years?
Well, I sort of reflect. I'm a little bit sad about the last, maybe it's not the last 10 years, but it's certainly since Lehman, so it's the last sort of 7 or 8 years, because I think there's been an abject, total focus on cost. Why is it that clients have become almost totally cost focused? The rise of finance and procurement, I think marketing losing power, and I think the importance of brands or brand Z, the importance of the top 100 brands, the importance of valuation, the importance of fusing the data, the brand data with the financial data, was that there was insufficient emphasis on the importance of revenue growth. This is the critical factor. This is the thing that companies have to do. To survive and prosper, you're not going to survive and prosper by cutting costs. There's a finite limit to do what you can do in cutting costs, whereas at least until you get to 100% market share, which is what we're all trying to do, there is no limit to what you can do on the top line. And the importance of the brand Z data, the importance of the top 100 globally, or whether we do it in China or Latin America or India, where it happens to be, is it focuses everybody on the importance of that metric. Now, we founded Brand Z, and I say we because it wasn't just me, because we didn't think there was an adequate way of measuring brands. We think that the ways out there are flimsy and academically inferior and technically inferior. We think our way of measuring, using the Brand Z data, the data that was developed over many years by Kantar and Millward Brown, fusing that with financial data from Bloomberg, etc., gives us a really robust way of measuring brands, much more effective than anybody else's, and they should be, in our modest and humble and objective view, the way to measure brands. So it's really important from the point of view of revenue growth, improving market share, and improving profitability.
Over the past 10 years of doing valuations, you said that we started with the global, and now we do a number of country valuations. This year, for the first time, we're going to be doing Indonesia to add to India and China and Latin America. We're putting a lot of resource and time behind that.
Yeah.
Do you think it's really important for the CEOs and the finance directors of major companies to get that causal link now between the investment they put into brands and driving shareholder value?
Well, I think it's absolutely critical, because I think the fundamental point is the organic growth rate of revenues. You can't cut your way to success. So it's not just the CEO or the CFO. It has to be the chief marketing officer, obviously. It has to be the chief procurement officer and the chief technology officer, the chief information officer. All these people are part of the team at the center of these companies have to understand that brands are important. We have to, the analogy is, I think clients are looking at their boots, and we're looking at their boots and our boots with them, instead of looking at the horizon. And we know from the Millward Brown data, we know from the Brand Z data, that if you ran an investment portfolio over 10 years or whenever it is, of those brands at the top, of those companies at the top of the Brand Z rankings, and we compare them to the indices, they always do better. I mean, the amazing thing is, we should have run with BlackRock or whoever. We should have run a fund which had the Brand Z, the top.
It would have been a nice profitable business.
It would have been a wonderful, probably better than WPP's business. But if we got 2 and 20 for managing a portfolio, $1 billion portfolio of those, we know they would have outperformed those companies that didn't invest in brands. You know, it's as Jeremy Bullmore pointed out many years ago. You know, if you have brands, if you want to grow your brands, your $1 billion brands or whatever, you have to nurture them. It's a bit like plants in a garden, I think was the analogy he used. And you have to fertilize them, you have to stimulate, you have to water them, you have to provide them with the right climatic conditions, the right atmosphere. And it's the same with brands. You have to tend them, you have to grow them, you have to invest in them.
10 years over the brand rankings, a long time in business. Probably the most cathartic event over that 10-year period was probably the Lehman's collapse. Many people remember where they were when Elvis died or 9/11.
Or when the exit poll in the last general election.
Yes, that was very cathartic moment.
Yes, a cathartic moment, yeah.
Where were you when you heard
I was
that
in New
Lehman's
York.
collapsed?
I was in New York, fretting like everybody else that the world had come to an end on that weekend, or might come to an end on the Monday morning. I mean, we had the Bear Stearns, we had the subprime, the insurance monoline crisis, which started in 2007, in August 2007. Then we had Bear Stearns in March. I remember where I was in Florida on that occasion. And then, of course, we had Lehman. And I think Lehman probably is the most important event over the last, and important for negative reasons too, because it has moved people. I don't think it had as dramatic an impact on consumers as it did on corporates. I think since Lehman, it reinforced behavior that was already starting, this cost-focused behavior, already starting to happen. But now it's been exacerbated. And you know, if you're running a business, you sort of, there are two ends of the spectrum really, and then you're sort of sitting in the middle. At one end of the spectrum, you have the sort of 3G models, which have, you know, been very successful, or the Valiant or Endo models in the pharmaceuticals, and the 3G models in CPGs and FMCG. At the other end of the spectrum, you sort of have Uber and Airbnb, and of course Google and Facebook and everybody else, the disruptors. And then you're sort of sitting in the middle, and you have Nelson Peltz on top of your head, and Bill Ackman and Dan Loeb, the activists. Inevitably, it makes people short-term. The average life of a CEO is 5 to 6 years, a CFO 4 to 5 years, a CMO 2 to 3 years, whatever the figures are. But they sort of think in political cycles. And unfortunately, I think they're short-term cycles, not long-term cycles.
You talk about some of those new sort of techno brands.
Yes.
10 years ago, Facebook was about a year old.
Yes.
I suppose YouTube had just been invented. Twitter was still the sound of a bird.
Yeah.
Clearly, over the last 10 years, technology and digital has had a profound impact on brand building. What have we done at WPP in order to meet that?
Well, there are two things. It's not just that there's a technology bucket, if we can call it that, and there's a geographical bucket. So if I went back to 2000 as opposed to 2015 or 2005, geography, the fast growth markets were probably about 10 or 12% of our business today, almost a third. Digital was virtually non-existent, as you said, and it's now 37%. So I could there's lap over between the two, but I could quite cheerfully claim and justifiably claim that half our business didn't exist 10 or 15 years ago. So we've changed at least 50% of our revenue base. But it is the two things. I mean, the technology, which is much more difficult to plan for because of the disruptors, it's very, you know, I wish I knew. You ask Eric Schmidt or Nikesh Arora or anybody, what do they worry about in terms of competition? They say the two-person startup in a garage in Bangalore or Sao Paulo.
Well, they're also paying very good money for two-man bands at the moment, aren't they?
No, that's true. But they are worried about disintermediation, just like we are. I mean, it's almost that they think they've become legacy businesses. The BRICS and the Next 11 have driven not just new global companies, but new global technology companies too. And we're seeing, you know, you take Amazon and Alibaba, but we've got Flipkart in India as well. Maybe not profitable, but maybe in the fullness of time will be. So I think you have to look at it on those two dimensions. We've driven it by looking at experimenting in the technological area as well. You know, we've got three strategies. One is to get our legacy businesses to grow faster in digital, our digital businesses to become even more powerful from a digital point of view, and then we've cannibalized our businesses. We've made investments and acquisitions on the basis if we don't eat our children, somebody else will. So we've invested in Vice.com, in Media Rights Capital, in Fullscreen, basically in technology, data and content, Rentrack, Comscore, AppNexus and Xaxis. I mean, we created with Xaxis, which I'm very proud of, a $1 billion brand in 4 years.
Looking to the future, Martin, maybe the next 10 years, again from a business leader perspective, how do you see the next 10 years playing out from a geopolitical perspective and then from a business insight perspective?
It's so difficult, David, to say that. Slow growth, I mean, by definition, the blow up we saw around Lehman was unsustainable. The faster growth that we saw pre-Lehman was unsustainable because it blew up. So the system blew up. So it had to
self-correct itself.
Yes, absolutely. So it's corrected itself at 5% nominal growth, let's say, and that's not as strong as we would like to see it. 3% real, let's say. That's going to continue. Pricing power might improve a little bit because we are seeing a little bit more inflation, but probably not enough. So the pressure is still on. The pressure will still be on finance and procurement, and we have to shift that balance. I think the biggest issue, when people say, my favorite question is, what do you worry about, as you know, David? When you ask me that question, it's not about the geography or even the technology, which is what everybody responds to. They say, well, it's the fast pace of technology, yada, yada. What I think the real big issue is shifting people's attention from cost to growth. Because if you think about that slow growth world or that moderate growth world or moderated growth world, what you've got to do is to find the pockets of growth to drive the top line. And that's where I think the brands analysis that we do is so important. The ones that win that are the ones that grow their top line. That's where the opportunities are. So I would say two things in relation to brands that are really important. Firstly, our methodology is better than anybody else's. It's quite clear in my mind that we should become the industrial standard. I'm subjective about it, I know, but we should be the industry standard because the methodology is better than anybody else's, and that's easily demonstrable. The second thing is, this is really important in the debate as to the role of marketing and the importance of marketing. Otherwise, marketing will continue to decline against other functions within companies, CFOs, procurement officers, information officers will dominate, whereas we want the marketing function to have at least an equal voice. And in my view, because revenue and revenue growth is so key for brand growth and TSR and total shareholder return and value, we have to make brand Z and brand valuation at the heart of that debate.
Well, on that, Martin,
thank you very much.
Thank you very much for joining us.
A little objective for you to achieve.
I'll do my best.
Thank you very much.
Thanks very much indeed.
Thanks very much. Thank you.